There is concern within WWE that Bron Breakker is no longer going to make a huge impact when he debuts on the main roster. Not to the levels they were hoping for, to which BC's response to this report is, "You think? Have you seen how he has been booked through 2023? You book him like this, and then you stop and say, I think he doesn't have the same value that he once did." Well, I would think not. If you lose all of your big matches throughout an entire calendar year, subconsciously even subconsciously, bare minimum, your audience is going to turn on the idea that you're special. It's up to you, and it starts in NXT, the booking of this guy. It's up to you to make him feel special, seem special, be special. You're the management. You can't book him like this throughout the entire year. 3 separate times we heard he was about to be called to the main roster, and they halted those plans. If you guys remember, there was one time he actually showed up on Monday Night Raw. This was several months ago. Showed up on Raw, on the microphone, out of nowhere. And the very next week, gone. You can only assume that that was one of the 3 occasions he was about to be, and they halted it. You got people like Booker T that want to see this dude in NXT for another entire year. They like what they're seeing. They want him to stay there for another year. To which BC would say, much love, Booker T. Much respect. Hell no. He can't afford another year in NXT. That's the reason Bron Breakker just a year ago was looked at as one of the next big things in pro wrestling. And here we are a year later, and most wrestling fans have Bron Breakker on the back burner. They threw Bron Breakker's name to the wayside. They forget Bron Breakker is a part of pro wrestling. In 1 year, he got cooled off. And now management is going to ask, why? We don't know why. It just doesn't feel the same. There's not that connection. There's not that hype. If we bring him up now, it's not going to make any bit of a difference. There's not going to be any real hype to it. There's not going to be a big response to bringing him up. Well, you, the WWE management, you did that. Guys, look at his 2023. Let's just start from, where do you want to start? Let's start from WrestleMania, right? This is what, March, April. These are all the big events that Bron Breakker has been booked in, just to give you some transparency, right? I like to talk in facts. So let's gather up the facts, and then we'll continue the conversation. But look at all of his top matches this year, all of the big events. So Bron Breakker was at WrestleMania weekend. It was an event called Stand and Deliver, April 1st. He lost, straight up pinfall loss, to Carmelo Hayes. Then 1 month later, May 28th, NXT Battleground loses, pinfall loss, once again to Carmelo Hayes. Then 1 month later, June 20th, NXT Gold Rush loses, pinfall loss to Sethington Rollins from the main roster. September 30th, NXT No Mercy loses, pinfall loss to Baron Corbin. This is right when Baron Corbin got the demotion to NXT, and they fed Breakker right over to Corbin. September 30th, No Mercy. December 9th, just recently, NXT Deadline loses, pinfall to Trick Williams. If you're wondering, he had one big event victory. It was October 31st, Halloween Havoc, and he beat Mr. Stone. If you don't watch the product, Mr. Stone is a manager. And it was you'd have to follow the story as how to we got that point. But he's also a wrestler too, but he's used as a manager. So he takes on Bron Breakker. That's Bron Breakker's one victory in 2023 at a big event, post or at WrestleMania and beyond. Every event, guys. Stand and Deliver, Battleground, Gold Rush, No Mercy, Deadline. It doesn't matter. And if you're wondering how he's touring, right, you can get a lot of feel on how the company looks at somebody or how much care they put into that person by how they're doing on the tour circuit. If you're wondering, Bron Breakker just recently, the 16th, what is that, Saturday night, he just lost at a house show to Trick Williams. So even just touring at house shows, Bron Breakker is showing up in front of these crowds and coming out the loser. Again, subconsciously what this does, because even when you work heel, you're expected to lose a bit more, right? That's just the general consensus in pro wrestling. It's going to happen. But what you're doing by losing this many big matches and then even nonsensical matches, you're allowing your audience to subconsciously look at you as a loser. And then when it's time to debut on the main roster for real, you're expecting that same audience that has just watched you lose all of the big matches throughout an entire calendar year and in their hometowns, their home cities, you're asking that same audience to flip the switch, blink of an eye, snap of a finger, drop of a hat. You're asking that same audience to care about this individual. It's a lot harder, right? You're digging your own hole for no reason. And you just keep digging that hole for no reason. You're making it harder on yourself for no reason. The management has nobody else to blame for Bron Breakker not feeling as special but themselves. It's an instance where you got to look in the mirror and say, okay, we did that and now we have to correct it. You know, one of my favorite wrestlers on the planet ever in the history of pro wrestling was and forever will be Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt, he was just larger than life. He had the character. I loved his matches. I loved everything that went into it. I loved the bells and whistles. He was one of the best wrestlers I've ever heard on the microphone. He just had that character. He was a presence. He brought the aura, the feel. Loved Bray Wyatt. And with Bray Wyatt, the biggest issue with him, because his booking was actually good. I mean, he was always in some really good storylines. He would always put those stories and feuds on his back. He got the TV time. The ratings backed up that Bray Wyatt was a hit, a success. His quarterly segments were always the highest. What really did Bray Wyatt in was when it came time for big matches, he would come out the loser. It didn't matter if it was Goldberg in Saudi Arabia taking his championship in just a few minutes with a simplistic jackhammer. Or WrestleMania with an RKO. Or Hell in a Cell and the referee calls off the match because Bray Wyatt is getting beat up too much. Hell in a Cell! And Bray Wyatt looked like an idiot. Can't do that. That's Bray Wyatt. This guy is special. He is the best of the best. Book him as such. The character has earned that. The character needs that type of booking. He's got to take some of those W's. And they wouldn't do it. He was booked flawless until they got to the big matches, and then he would just lose. Bron Breakker has everything going for him, but for some reason, they book this guy into the weirdest matches, pin themselves into a corner where they feel Breakker has to lose. We really want to pump up Mello. We really want to pump up Trick. We really want to bump up Baron, right? We demoted him. They brought him to NXT, and now we got to make him feel special here, right? We got to make him see that it's not a bad thing to go to NXT. You're going to rule the land. You're going to beat people like Bron Breakker. You can run NXT, Baron Corbin. Let's bring down some main roster. All right, let's bring Seth over so he can also beat Bron Breakker. You lose all of these big matches in 2023, and then you wonder why hype for Bron Breakker has died off? Why it's not there anymore? This was a guy who was turning heads that people that don't even watch NXT just a year ago. People were like, oh, this is Bron Breakker, man. They're going to build him up to be a beast. He's going to be rocking when he gets to the main roster. It's going to be special. His debut is going to be epic. And you know they're going to have a nice, long, badass plan for this dude from the jump. Now he's not even debuted. They don't even know what to do with Bron. The report we got was 3 separate occasions he was supposed to be called up, and they pulled him back. This usually tells you they're losing faith in the individual, too. If you guys follow these type of situations, especially in WWE, it's usually because management is turning their back on the individual. The booking would show that, by the way. The booking would show that they turned their back on Braun a long time ago. But if you're somebody like Booker T, you want to see this dude in NXT another whole year. Another whole year. He's already cooled off. The pot of water was boiling. It was ready. He was ready. Throw in that pasta, let this guy cook on the main roster. And now what you did is you turned the oven off. What was once heated has completely cooled off. Ain't nothing gonna cook in that pot of water. It's no longer boiling. It's not even hot. It's not even lukewarm. That pot of water. It has cooled off immensely. You gotta try everything in your arsenal now to try to reheat that pot of water. Try to get it anywhere close to boiling. It's sad, man. It's sad that Bron Breakker is no longer a big talking point in pro wrestling. And you got some people that are okay with it. They think he's putting on some good work. Doesn't matter. This guy was a beast. He was a machine. And to lose this many times on the grandest stages. So management doesn't know now. Oh man, they don't think he's going to make a big impact. We got to hold off a little bit longer now. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to have him lose more matches? We're going into another stand and deliver at Mania coming up in a few months. Going to have him lose a few more times, stand and deliver, and then the night after WrestleMania, maybe he debuts on the main roster after losing 10 straight big grand stage matches. Then we'll debut Bron Breakker. Booking is everything. Right? It all starts with booking. And booking like this is usually caused by two factors. Either one of the two or both. One, they've given up on you. Or two, it's creative bankruptcy. They just don't know what to do with you. So they're putting you in all of these odd situations and odd matches and even having you come out with an L. But creative bankruptcy is a real thing. And that leads us into our next story. A report that BC got that 3H's is having issues with roster management. That's how it was told to me. I put it right into my notes when that was told to me in that way. Roster management issues is what Levesque McMahon is currently dealing with. Well, you shouldn't be that shocked. When it comes to names of individuals that we haven't seen for a while, like Dexter Lumis, who we've been hearing reports, they just have nothing for. I believe Fightful just confirmed those reports over the last 24 hours. I believe it was Fightful. But they confirmed the same reports we've been hearing for over a week. Dexter Lumis doesn't have an injury that is keeping him out. He's just waiting on word as to what to do. So in the meantime, Dex Lumis has to sit at catering and waiting for the next triple-layered moose cake to show up on his table. Or they're just having him sit home. Either which way. Dexter Lumis is a guy who's got presence. He can have that aura, that feel, whether there's bells and whistles backing this guy or whatnot. And he can go in the ring, by the way. Doesn't even have to rely on bells and whistles. He just has a really cool character that can connect. How do you screw up somebody like Dexter Lumis? That coincides with Karrion Kross. Paul Levesque McMahon had Karrion Kross sitting at home for months. He finally brought him back last Friday just to lose to Bob Lashley. And then this past Friday, Karrion Kross is doing this video package, this little vignette video, and him and Scarlett are like, they have some of their bells and whistles back, and they're sounding like they're badass, like maybe we should take them seriously again. But 7 days earlier, you were losing simplistically, flat on your back looking up at the lights to Bob Lashley. So that's what I mean. How you do things matters. That's the glimmer of hope. Hopefully, they're going to try something new with Karrion Kross. Hopefully, he becomes more relevant than he has been. But why would you do it like that? Why would you have him totally off camera, at home for months, call him back to work just to lose to Bob Lashley on live television, and then 1 week later, you're going to do the character rehaul? That's still fresh in a lot of people's dome piece that he just lost to Bob Lashley a week earlier, and 2 months before that, he was sitting at home. Wouldn't it have, I'm just going to throw this out there, wouldn't it have been better and made more sense, have been more impactful, better for Karrion, better for the company, better for the fans, if they maybe didn't have Karrion show up after 2 months of being in obscurity, have him show up to lose against Bob Lashley, maybe not do that, and just have the video vignette start to play after 2 months of not seeing Karrion? Wouldn't that have been more effective? Rhetorically, that's a yes. But they did this weird thing with Karrion, and that tells you they don't know what they're doing with Karrion. We might see a character rehaul finally. He might win a couple 2-3 matches, and then it's right back into catering. We saw that with Xia Li, right? Creative bankruptcy. It's not just Dexter Lumis. It's not just Karrion Kross. Xia Li was told for months by Paul Levesque McMahon, hold tight. And I use that exact word because that's how it was told to me by my people. When asking about Xia Li, they're telling her to hold tight right now. Hold tight. Hold tight. What is she? Is she in tug of war? She just wants the camera time that she had a month ago when it looked like she was getting a push, and they brought her up a couple of steps and dragged her back a mile. The only tug of war is WWE playing the games with Xia Li. Here, go up a few steps. Now we're going to yank you back a mile. She wins 2 matches, one against Candice LeRae, one against Indy Hartwell. Looks like they're finally utilizing Xia Li, who is a real presence in that ring. She brings a believability to that division that a lot of females, a lot of pro wrestlers, men or female, they don't bring to that ring. Xia Li brings that believability. There was people that truly thought that Candice and Indy were getting knocked out by Xia. That's how good Xia is. And great selling, by the way, by Candice and Indy Hartwell. Much props, much respect to them for selling it like they did. Fans actually pissed off that Xia injured them for real. The only issue, it wasn't for real. It was just done beautifully. That's Xia Li. And she wins those 2 matches, and it was just to set up a loss to Becky Lynch and then Valkyria, I believe, in NXT. They had her go to NXT after she lost to Becky Lynch on Raw. 2 days later, or the next night, she loses to Val. And she hasn't been seen since. Some people say, well, BC, she's probably got an injury. Nope. She's literally posting left and right all her workouts. She just had back day a couple of days ago and a massive shoulder day 5 days ago. She's busting her ass in that gym, waiting. Maybe Paul Levesque McMahon will make that call soon to utilize her properly. But could you imagine thinking you're finally getting a push after months of sitting at home, and they just brought you back for 1 month. They gave you a couple of victories, not for you, but just to bump you up so you're a viable candidate to get beat to Becky and Val. And once you do the deed to them, you can go back home, or we can allow you in the building, but you're going to sit at catering. Xia Li has been MIA since losing those back-to-back matches. Creative bankruptcy. How do you not have something for Xia Li? And then you have people like Apollo and Omos. I understand individuals that maybe you can take them or leave them, right? Omos, a lot of people forget he's even still with WWE. BC at one point honestly thought that he was part of those last cuts. I don't know why. I just lumped him into that category. No, he's very much still a part of WWE. Just creative bankruptcy. I think they truly tried everything, and it just didn't connect with the audience. But they see this guy as a presence, a special act, so they don't want to get rid of him. But guys, he's been touring at live events since September. He's had about a dozen matches, and it's real interesting, right? If you really take a deep dive into the research, the last several months, he's just beating 2 dudes on and off. He only has matches with 2 individuals, and he beats them every time. Tozawa and John Gargano. Johnny Gargano, Johnny Wrestling. That's it. It's funny. He's beaten Tozawa like 4 or 5 times in a row, then Johnny Gargano a couple times. Then Tozawa 3 times, then Johnny Gargano a couple times. Back to Tozawa. So for the last several months, they have him going to house shows and beating Tozawa and John Gargano. So he's not injured or anything. It's creative bankruptcy. He's just taking a roster spot, but they really don't have anything for him. They tried a lot of things. It didn't work, and it looks like they just gave up. They just don't want to get rid of him. So then you have somebody like Apollo, right? He's back from his injury. He said a few weeks ago, it feels great to be back in the ring again. You wouldn't know that because you haven't seen him. The ring rust we're hearing is shaken off. He's ready to rock. They just don't know what to do or how to bring back Apollo. That's the problem. The guy's been gone for months. Isn't it management's job? Their sole reasoning for being management is to manage these wrestlers, right? Really help them along the way. By helping them, you're only going to help your own company, and you're going to make it better for the fans as well, because you actually thought beforehand as to what to do with these individuals. And when they get hurt, as sucky as of a situation that is, because they're injured, that gives you time. That gives you months to think, what do we want to do with this individual? So when they come back, they have an immaculate storyline ready to rock. It's the opposite, though, with WWE, if you noticed. They come back, and after all that time, WWE never spent a moment thinking about them. Not a moment. So they come back in the most irrelevant, nonsensical ways. Don't be shocked if Apollo just comes back just in a regular match, right? They just have him in there tagging up with Tozawa or something, right? I wouldn't be shocked that it's not even involved in a storyline or anything big or epic. It's just Apollo. And that doesn't work, right? Because Apollo isn't that great on the microphone anyway. He's a really good wrestler. You have to learn how to play to the strengths and hide the weaknesses with somebody like Apollo. But if the company doesn't care to do such, we're going to get the same Apollo. It'll be the same reactions. It'll be the same redundancy and the same lackluster response. And the wheel goes round and round. But it's just amazing to me that people like Dexter Lumis or a Karrion Kross or a Xia Li and so many others, they can sit there in catering or told to stay at home because we have nothing for you. And meanwhile, Tozawa gets all this time on TV because hopefully it's making people laugh, right? He's doing the Tozawa dance with the 1 pound weights. Or maybe he's got that town's championship title, right? He's got the Green Bay title. He's doing the Tozawa dance and people are giggling, right? He gets all this TV time and Xia Li can't get the time of day. You have the Creed brothers, right? They're good wrestlers, right? We all like the Creed brothers, by the way, right? We hope that there's something like the Steiner brothers, maybe, right? We always want to compare to something else. There ain't ever going to be another Steiner brothers, but that's the comparison. On the microphone, it's exhausting to listen to these two. It's best if we don't, and that's why they don't give them a microphone, if you've noticed. Their backstage antics when they're around the Tozawa comedy, it's some of the worst acting I've ever seen in pro wrestling by the Creed brothers, unfortunately. So they're good wrestlers. We want the best for them. But they're like pro wrestling vacuum cleaners, and they will suck up any personality and charisma that's in their vicinity. They'll suck up all the charisma, all the personality. But the Creed brothers have been getting all this time. They get a match on Monday night. They save Cody Rhodes. They saved a couple people on Monday night. Cody Rhodes was one save, and then they saved somebody else. I forgot who it was. They made 2 saves on Monday night and the match. So the Creed brothers were all over the show like Tozawa. But you can't find anything for Dex Lumis? Dragon Lee, the push of all pushes recently, catapulted from NXT to the main roster. Catapulted to the North American Championship. An NXT title, by the way, that was held by a main roster guy, Dominic, and Dominic lost it to another main roster guy because they really want to push Dragon Lee. There's only one problem. Again, just like the Creed brothers, we like Dragon Lee. I'm not a big supporter because I just don't see any reason to jump out of my seat for Dragon Lee. Like many wrestling fans, we just don't see it. He's a good wrestler. But it's a dude in a mask with lackluster mic skills that doesn't make you feel any special way. He comes out, he does some moves, and he leaves. That described 99.99% of wrestlers today. And that's great if you want to give Dragon Lee the stage. But he's getting a lot of TV time. He's getting the master push. And guys like Karrion Kross are just hoping that this next rehaul works. Dexter Lumis and Xia Li have to sit at catering. Apollo may wait 3 more months back from injury before they have something for him. And so many other guys. I'm just giving you some names in the context of the report that WWE Paul Levesque McMahon is having, and I quote, roster management issues. And he's got 3 hours to work with on Raw. He's got 2 more hours on SmackDown, but he's never done good with that many hours, right? His best work, Paul Levesque McMahon, was in Black and Gold many years ago when it was a 1-hour show tucked on the network. Once it went to cable and it went to 2 hours, Paul Levesque McMahon, he was in over his head. He started losing in the ratings. It started to go backwards fast, and he found himself out. And now he's heading 5 hours of event, not including NXT, 5 hours of main roster content, and we heard those are where the issues are lying. Raw is bringing in its worst ratings of all time since Paul Levesque McMahon took over. And he just doesn't have any answers. Well, I do. You're leaving a lot of people in catering that are actually big personalities. Like, they have character. And you're leaving people with character on the outs, and you're bringing in people that literally just suck up all the personality and charisma in the entire arena. It's dumbfounding, man. It absolutely is. But these are big issues, and these two stories kind of coincide with one another. The Bron Breakker situation and a lot of these talents that can't get the screen time, or they just don't have anything for these individuals. That's the big problem. You have so many wrestlers on the roster, and you just don't know what to do with them. So something has to give at some point, right? The next round of cuts, which is going to be massive because Endeavor is out, nearly $40 million still needs to be cut, and they've already done all the cuts they can for employees in Stamford, Connecticut. So that $40 million, a lot of that has to come from the talent contracts. There's going to be a massive cut. You never want to see anybody lose their job. But this is their time to really think, what are we doing? Who do we want to work with? And who are we willing to cut ties with? And whoever we keep, we better make sure that we make a deal with them and to ourselves, that we're going to give them a real chance to take this company and put it on their back. We're not just going to keep them on the roster to sit them at catering. Or they just shouldn't be here for them or for us. It's not benefiting anybody. Name's BC. And until next time, and there will be a next time, the current status is we are out. Top guys saying check you. Peace.